So how to import data from files? Well, first of all, let's talk about which kind of files you can import data from. And let's start with the simplest case, from text files. And you can wonder how to actually save tabulated data in text files. Actually, there is a way to do that. It's called separated values. For example, you can see that in this case, I have a table. I have 3 columns, a height of person, a weight of person, and the gender of person. And you can see that inside the file, I have a normal text. Yeah. However, in this text, you can see that every value is separated with a comma, and then comma, not dot. And then you can see that the decimal point is dot. Yeah. So this format of saving data, tabulated data files, tabulated data values in this way is called CSV, or comma separated values. Okay. Many different software can do that. Alternatively, you can, for example, have semicolon separated values. Usually, this way is used in languages where decimal separator is comma, not dot. For example, in German language or in Danish language. So in this case, you can see that the decimal separator, it's the ones that here I use for height values. The decimal separator is comma, so we cannot use comma for the separator between values. So we simply use a semicolon separated values. In R, it's called CSV2. So CSV, it means comma separated values. CSV2 is called semicolon separated values. Okay, just you will see where it comes from. Then finally, sometimes you can have a file with different separators. Separators can be a hashtag, it can be space, it can be tabulation separated values. Like you can see here, I have a little space here. Usually space is not used because space has another meaning and people use tabulation. Tabulation, it's a key on the keyboard. You can probably use it in Word document to make a nice columns in your text. Okay, so all these text files where values are separated by a certain symbol can be loaded easily to R. How? Well, first of all, let me show you how to create such file from Excel. In this case, I use a normal Excel from for Microsoft, for MacOS, for Apple. But if you have Windows Excel, it's about the same. So imagine that you have created a table like I showed here, and then you want to save it not as an Excel file, but as a comma-separated file. Well, you click File, Save As, and then here in File Format, instead of Excel file, you simply click here and select these comma-separated values. It may have different names. For example, if you have Danish Excel, then it can be semicolon, something delimited values. But look at this extension. It should be .csv. So that's the way to actually to save Excel table, any flat Excel table, as a text file. Okay, and then if it's a comma separated values, you can read this file into R using a special function, read CSV. In this case, I show you all possible arguments, almost all possible arguments in this function, but you don't need to specify all of them, only if you want to change the default values, and default values are shown here. So let me explain the arguments. The first and the main argument, right? So let me again be consistent. Sometimes I use equal, sometimes I use this arrow. The first argument, and that's the only mandatory argument, it's a file name, a full path to a file if this file is not located in the same folder as you have the other stuff. It's not in your working directory, for example. And that's the only main mandatory argument. The second argument is header. Header means, do you have column names in the first row of this file? So you remember column names are called header. So the header equal to true, it means that read CSV will assume that the text values in the first row of this file are column names. If you don't have column names, you need to set header to false. But if you have column names, you can just skip this argument because by default header is true. The second argument, it's a separator. But again, by default, it's a comma because we believe it's a comma separated values. If you have semicolon separated values, you simply specify here. You can specify semicolon here. Or if you have some other like tabulation or some other white space, for example, you can specify the symbol that is used to separate your values. The next argument, it's a separator for decimals. And you can see again, by default, it's a dot. If you have comma, you can specify the decimal separator is comma. And then finally, the last argument, row names, what it means. Sometimes you have a special dedicated column with names of the observations. So it's not just real data, it's names of the observations. And most of the time, this is the first column, right? If you indeed have names in the first column, you need to specify it like this, row names equal to 1. If you don't have row names, then don't specify it at all, because by default, R will assume that you don't have any row names, okay? So this is the full syntax, almost full syntax of the read CSV file, okay? Now, look, this is the simplified version of read CSV. In this case, I just specify only a file name. It means that R by default will assume that the values are separated with comma and decimals are separated with dot, okay? If you want to read data from file where values are separated with semicolon and the decimals are separated with comma, then you either can specify these two parameters explicitly to read CSV, or you can use a shortcut. So there is a very special shortcut. It's called read CSV2. That's why I called this kind of file CSV2. If you use read CSV2 instead of read CSV, these settings will be assumed by default. Okay, so either read CSV or read CSV2. And in both cases, it is assumed that there are no row names. So it's just a header and the values, no row names. If you have row names, you need to specify arguments in which column you have the row names. Okay. Now, of course, you can read data directly from Excel file. However, it means XLSX file. So when you save it as an Excel table, it's possible. However, R doesn't have this possibility built in. Luckily, there is a special package. It's called readXL. And this package allows you to actually manipulate with Excel files, including reading Excel files. And first of all, you need to install this package. You need to do it only once. You remember, you don't need to install the package every time you want to use it. But every time you want to use it, you need to load it by using function library. We discussed it in the first block of the lectures, right? So first you load it by using function library. And then the function that you need is this one, readXL. And again, by default, you need to provide only file name. In this case, it will take simply a table from the first sheet of this book, of Excel book. And then by default, it assumes that you have only one table on this sheet, and this is a flat table. So you have columns, you have rows, okay? And then readXL always assumes that you have a header, okay? If you don't have a header, then you need to make one if you want to have readXL working correctly, okay? However, there is a very important thing. readXL does not return, I forgot to say, but read CSV returns you the table as data frame. So you already have data frame if you use read CSV. However, readXL doesn't. readXL creates this DIM as an object which is called table. This is like a data frame on steroids. It's a very nice type of data, but I don't recommend to use it until you are familiar with R. So I recommend you to convert this to a data frame first. Okay, this is how to do it. You simply write a function as data frame, and then provide what you have read here, and then that's what you got. Yeah. So strictly speaking, this little code here, these 3 lines. First of all, you load your readXL as a library, then you read data from this file, and then you convert it to a data frame. So after these 3 lines, you will get this table, the data table, as a data frame. Okay. If you want to specify a particular sheet in your book, for example, it's not the first sheet, but maybe second or third, you can provide a sheet name as a second argument, or you can provide a number, an index. You can also provide a range. For example, if you have several tables on the same sheet, you can provide a range, or maybe you have one table, but you don't want to read the whole table, you want to read only a part of it, you can provide this one. But you remember that the first row of this range is always considered as a header. So you must have header in your table if you want to use a readXL file. Okay. So that's actually it. You can see that it's relatively simple, almost as simple as reading CSV files. And then you can read any tables from Excel.